William just stepped into his first moment as king in front of the entire world, and Camilla's family will never recover from what he did. He went straight for everything that gave her power and started ripping it apart piece by piece. Then he turned on her children and stripped away everything Camilla had built for them as Queen Consort. And just when Camilla thought she had seen the worst of it, she found out the person tearing her world apart was never William at all. It was someone she least expected. The walk passed. Okay, so this whole thing kicked off at a state reception at Buckingham Palace, and you need to know going in, this wasn't William's event to host. It should have been Charles's. But his illness had gotten so bad by this point that he just couldn't do it anymore. So he was there, sitting close by, present, but not running anything. So here's the setup. This was a state reception, which meant foreign dignitaries were there. Official guests. The full formal thing. And with an event like that, there's always a receiving line, where the host stands at the front and personally greets every single guest as they arrive, one by one, before anything else happens. It's not casual. Everyone in that room is watching it, because every handshake is basically a public stamp of who matters and who gets acknowledged. William was the one standing at the front of that line, greeting dignitaries one after another in his father's place. And something pretty embarrassing happened when he got to Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, who were folded into that same line because that's just where Camilla had always placed them, right alongside the official guests, like they belonged there. William didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't even glance over, and honestly, that's the part that actually gets people, because the aide standing right behind him, whose entire job was to announce names down that line, opened his mouth to introduce them and just stopped, mid-breath. He clocked it half a second too late to fix it, and the silence where their names should have been said was so much louder than if he'd just said them out loud. Tom Parker Bowles froze. You could see him trying to process it in real time, the heat rising in his face. That specific kind of humiliation where you have to keep smiling because there are cameras everywhere and you can't let it show. Laura Lopes's expression didn't move either, but her eyes followed William all the way down the line, watching the exact spot where a handshake should have happened and didn't, in front of every single dignitary in that room. Reports have it that Tom and Laura shamefully left that event. Laura left first, almost immediately after the embarrassing snub. She fled through the back door, glancing around just to be sure no one was watching her take the walk of shame. Just a few minutes later, Tom got up too and escaped. Almost no one even noticed they had done, or maybe they just pretended. William had been quietly running things for months by this point, while Charles fell apart behind the scenes. So this wasn't him performing power he didn't have. This was him finally being seen doing what he'd already been doing in private. But the real message was something else entirely, and it was aimed directly at Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. For years, they'd shown up to things like this because Camilla let them, not because they earned a single bit of it. Camilla had spent years quietly opening that door for them, and somewhere along the way, they'd started acting like it was just theirs by right. William's silence said exactly what he wanted it to say. You were never supposed to be standing in this line. You were here because someone let you in. And that's not happening anymore, not under him. And then you find out what else happened that same day, and it gets worse. Camilla had quietly arranged a small gift for William weeks earlier, something meant to smooth things over. She knew William had real power now, and that was her way of, well, trying to get on his good side. Word going around afterward was that William saw exactly what it was for what it was, a bribe dressed up as a courtesy, and refused it outright. I don't take gifts from pretenders. That's what they claim he said. Nobody's confirmed exactly how it played out behind closed doors, though. But the result speaks for itself. The gift never reached him. Something awkward also happened at that event. Tom Parker Bowles' seat, the one that had been placed close to Camilla, was moved hours before the event. No explanation was given. But people close to the household started piecing together that this wasn't some random scheduling mix-up. It lined up exactly with what William had already been saying privately, that he wasn't going to keep letting people get close to the family who hadn't earned the right to be there. If that's true, it means he ordered that chair pulled himself. And if he did, that's not just a snub. That's him telling Camilla and her whole family something much colder. He's watching every single one of them now, and he's done tolerating what Charles let slide for years. What they already lost. So remember how that walk past wasn't even the worst thing they were going to lose that week. Here's what happened next, and it started the very next morning. Camilla's office got 3 calls before breakfast was even cleared away, and each one landed worse than the last. First one was about a private dinner at Charles's countryside estate, something that had been on the calendar for over a month. Tom Parker Bowles had been informally added to that guest list for years, no official reason, just because Camilla had always made sure he was included. That morning, his name got yanked off the draft schedule. No call to explain it, just gone. When Camilla found out, she didn't try to hide how she felt. She said flat out to anyone in earshot that William was overstepping and that his attitude was starting to genuinely get on her nerves. This wasn't subtle anymore. She was done pretending it didn't bother her. Then the second call came in about Laura Lopes's literacy charity dinner, an event she'd lent her name to for 3 years running. Her office got a notice saying her involvement was under review pending the new household calendar. Laura Lopes read that line twice before she actually understood it, and when she did, her hands were shaking by the time she put the phone down. 3 years of showing up, of caring about that cause, wiped out with one sentence, and then the third call hit, and this one was the worst, because it wasn't even about Tom Parker Bowles or Laura Lopes anymore. It was about the grandchildren's summer appearance at the family's coastal retreat, something Camilla had personally coordinated through her own office every single year. That scheduling authority got stripped away and handed straight to Catherine's staff. Camilla lost the actual ability to decide who shows up to see her own grandchildren, and that's the moment her fury turned into something closer to panic. If anything on this list was built to actually hurt, that was it. There'd already been a warning about exactly this, months before any of it happened. People close to the household had said once Catherine becomes queen, Camilla would basically be at her mercy. At the time, that got dismissed as gossip. Now, it wasn't gossip. It was happening. Call by call in a single morning, and there was nothing she could do but sit there and watch it unfold. By the time the third call ended, Camilla finally understood what was actually happening, and the realization hit like a slap. None of what Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, or the grandchildren had access to was ever guaranteed. It was always just her, personally, deciding to extend it. And now that her influence was crumbling, all of it could vanish without anyone bothering to explain why, because apparently nobody owed her an explanation anymore. It got worse once people started looking closer at what was happening underneath all this. That literacy charity Laura Lopes had been attached to wasted no time lining up a different patron for the upcoming dinner before she'd even been formally told she was out. And the speed of it stung worse than the loss itself. People don't move that fast unless somebody made sure they knew exactly where things were heading. Then there was the family portrait, a formal photo that had hung in a minor reception corridor for years. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes included in the wider family group. That same week, it got torn down for restoration. Camilla, furious the second she heard, tried to have it slammed straight back up herself, going through her own staff to override the order. It got shut down before it ever happened. And when she pushed harder, asking exactly who'd given the instruction and why, she got pulled aside and warned in no uncertain terms to leave it alone. What exactly was she thinking when she decided to place her kids on a wall meant for only royalties? That's the real motive behind every single one of these moves. It wasn't about punishing Tom Parker Bowles or Laura Lopes specifically. It was about making sure nobody could ever point to a piece of paper proving they were entitled to any of it in the first place. And that's a colder kind of cruelty than a shouted insult ever could be. Camilla was about to find out this wasn't even the part that would hurt the most. The meeting she wasn't in. So while Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes were busy losing everything they thought was theirs, something far bigger was happening, and Camilla had no idea it was even on the table. Here's exactly what William and Catherine did. They stripped Andrew out of public life completely. His remaining duties, gone. His standing at Windsor, gone. Any future role in royal events, gone. Not scaled back. Removed entirely in one meeting without a single conversation with the one person who'd spent years keeping his position intact in the first place. Because here's the thing, this was never really just about Andrew. It was about what Camilla had built for him, and what it meant that they tore it down without even telling her. Years back, when Andrew first hit rough water within the institution, Camilla was the one who quietly held it together. She called in favors, managed the press, smoothed over what should have ended his role outright. William and Catherine undid all of it without telling her a single word, and honestly, that must have stung a lot. The meeting happened in a side room off the private study, not the formal council chamber where decisions like this normally got logged. That wasn't an accident. Keeping it there meant keeping it invisible. William, Catherine, 2 senior advisors. That was the whole room. Camilla wasn't even worth a heads up. She found out 2 days later, and not from Charles. Her own private secretary mentioned it, secondhand, picked up from a junior aide who hadn't realized what he was actually handing over. And when it actually hit her, what had happened, she was livid. How dare they sit in a room and erase years of her work without her? Did they actually think she'd just accept it? Did they have any idea who they were dealing with, or did they genuinely believe she'd built all of that influence just to watch it get dismantled in a side room she wasn't even allowed into? When she confronted Charles that night, he didn't even bother denying it. He just said he hadn't wanted her to carry the weight of it, as if that softened anything, as if she hadn't carried far heavier things for him for years without anyone asking first. No warning, no call. That's how little Andrew meant to him now, and apparently, Camilla wasn't worth much more. But here's the part that actually destroyed her. It wasn't losing Andrew's case. It was what being left out of that room said about her, out loud, without anyone needing to say it directly. It told her she didn't matter enough to consult anymore. She demanded the minutes afterward. There weren't any. The meeting had been scrubbed from existing in any official sense, so there'd be nothing left for her to point to. When she finally cornered Catherine, expecting at minimum an acknowledgement, Catherine barely blinked. Called it a logistics conversation, not a family one. A polished way of telling Camilla to her face that she didn't count as family when it mattered. And the worst part was how obvious all of it was. Nobody even tried to hide it. That's what stung the most. Not that she'd been cut out, but that they didn't think she was worth the effort of pretending otherwise. By the end of that week, Camilla wasn't fighting for Andrew anymore. She was fighting for her own relevance, and losing. And the next chance the world would get to see exactly where she actually stood was already on the calendar. A state banquet, cameras, dignitaries, everyone watching. She just had no idea yet how brutal that answer was about to be. The tiara. Okay, so here's exactly what happened, and this one's petty in the best way. At the state banquet during the 2026 visit, Catherine showed up wearing a tiara straight from the royal collection, the kind that's basically reserved for whoever holds the top spot among the women in the family. Nobody handed it to her for the night. She just wore it like it was already hers. And look, this was never about jewelry. It was about the message. And the message landed exactly the way she wanted it to. Everyone in that room knew what it meant the second she walked in. You don't wear that piece by accident. Every dignitary there clocked it instantly. No explanation needed, because that tiara basically says, "I'm next," without a single word. Here's the part that actually makes this brutal. Camilla had asked weeks before if she could wear that exact piece for an event of her own. She got told it was already accounted for elsewhere. Nobody said where. Guess where it turned up? She found out at the banquet, in front of foreign dignitaries. Watching it sit on someone else's head like it was never even a question. And she was furious, properly furious. How dare Catherine just take it without asking? Did she think Camilla wouldn't notice? Or did she just not care anymore whether Camilla noticed at all? Then her seat got moved. One spot further from the head table than it should have been. Small, technically nothing, except everyone who actually understands these seating charts clocked it instantly. That's the kind of slight that's only humiliating because it's meant to be seen. And then the toast. There's always a direct toast to the Queen Consort, by name. This year it got rewritten to thank the wider family instead. Vague on purpose. Thanks everyone, names no one, which conveniently means it skipped Camilla entirely. First time that's happened in years. No tiara, no toast, no seat that mattered. That's how little she was worth to them now. And they made sure she felt every bit of it. What came after was a full week of ice between both households. Calls rerouted through staff. Joint appearances quietly canceled. One aide called it the coldest the place had felt in years, which honestly says a lot. And the worst part? Nobody even bothered hiding it. That's what actually stung, not the snub itself, but knowing they didn't think she was worth the effort of pretending otherwise. The phone call. Okay, so by the time that night ended, Camilla was done. Completely done. No tiara, no toast, no seat. And now she was sitting alone in the palace with all of it sitting on her chest. She hadn't even changed out of the banquet dress. Just sat there in it, lights still on, because turning them off felt like giving up on the night making sense. Her phone sat right there. Charles's name still in her recent calls. 3 days old, untouched. She looked at it, didn't call him. What was he even going to say at that point that fixed anything? So she called Tom Parker Bowles instead. 4 minutes. That was it. She didn't ask how he was doing. She asked what people were saying, because that's where her head was. Not comfort, damage control. He told her straight. It doesn't look good. People were already talking. Staff, the usual circles, the ones who track exactly who's in favor and who isn't. And word was spreading fast that she'd been frozen out, that her influence was gone, that there was no point keeping her close anymore. She went quiet, properly quiet, the kind that made him ask if she was still on the line. "I'm thinking," she said. Then she hung up. No goodbye, nothing. And that was brutal in a way nothing else that night had been, because every other slight had someone else doing it to her. This one was just her, alone, with nobody left to call who actually had an answer. Her private secretary lingered at the door longer than usual, clearly deciding whether to say something. Camilla told her to go home. She did. No call to Charles. No one left in the room. That's how alone she really was. And the people already talking behind her back made sure everyone knew it but her. The architect behind the throne. Okay, so here's the part that actually changes how you see everything that happened so far. You ready for this? None of it was random. None of it was William just being cold on instinct. There was someone behind all of it the entire time, quietly running the whole show, and it wasn't him. It was Catherine. I mean, all along, the whole time. And here's how she even got the power to pull this off in the first place. The second William started absorbing real authority while Charles's health collapsed, Catherine's position shifted right along with his. Every decision running through him started running through her too. William handed her the keys just by trusting her with everything, and she used every single one of them. People had been calling her the stabilizing force behind the transition for months. Soft language, grounded, approachable, good with people. Honestly, that framing did a lot of heavy lifting to hide what she actually was. Because here's the truth nobody said out loud. Catherine never respected the way Camilla ran things. Not the open doors, not the informal access handed out like party favors, not decades of letting people borrow royal proximity with nothing to show for it. She watched it for years and thought it was sloppy, undisciplined, a liability waiting to blow the whole institution apart. So the second she actually had power, she didn't hesitate for a second. She started taking it apart, piece by piece. And remember the walk past, the one that kicked all of this off? You will not believe whose idea that actually was. One advisor admitted carefully, off the record, that skipping the greeting entirely was raised to William the night before, framed gently as something worth considering. He didn't dream that up himself. She planted it in his head and let him think it was his own move. Weeks before any of this became visible, she'd already given her own staff specific instructions on exactly how engagements involving non-working family should be handled going forward. That's the actual policy behind every reassigned invitation, every shelved event, every quietly pulled name off a guest list. It didn't start with a snub at a reception. It started with her, in a room nobody saw, weeks earlier. So go back through everything now because it all lines up. The empty chair, the meeting Camilla wasn't invited to, the tiara that showed up exactly where it'd do the most damage, the toast that conveniently forgot her name. None of that was William improvising as he went. That was Catherine, using the authority he handed her to dismantle, deliberately, everything Camilla had spent decades building. Because she'd been waiting for this exact chance the whole time. Everyone was watching William, bracing for him, reading his every move like he was the one redrawing the entire institution. The whole time, the real architect was standing quietly right beside him, smiling for the cameras, letting him take every bit of the credit and every bit of the blame. By the time the public caught up to any of it, it had already been finished for months. Nobody outside that palace ever saw it coming. And honestly, you have to hand it to her. That's not luck. That's commendable, in the coldest way possible.